Before we move to our discussion of Frankenstein, I just want to talk briefly about the Gothic elements that are important to this novel and its popularity and why it has survived for as long as it has. Um, Fred Bonning defines the Gothic as a writing of excess, and this is important because there are very few moments of gray in this novel. There are quick changes from joy to pain, from calm to frenzy. And so this is important to understand that it is a part of a larger form called the Gothic that was extremely popular at this time. And here are some of the features that are really important to keep in mind when reading this novel. Transgression is a feature that is shared by Gothic novels in particular. And even though this is an epistolary novel that doesn't fit neatly into the Gothic form, it shares these features. In this case of Frankenstein, the most obvious transgression is Victor's in his attempt to create the monster or the creature. Moral ambiguity means that something in this text is playing with conceptions of good and evil, so blurring the lines and refusing to make a clear distinction between what is good and what is evil, so a lack of moral absolutes. And in the case of Victor and the creature, we are encouraged to sympathize with one or the other at different moments in the novel, and we will talk about where your sympathies lie at the different stages of the novel. There is often a presence of prophecies or curses that are ignored, foreshadowing moments of characters' demise that we as readers also tend to forget. Character doubling is extremely important in the case of Frankenstein, particularly with the doubling of Victor and the creature, but also with the presence of Walton. And I want to be thinking about how he fits into this narrative and who he seems to be doubling with. Setting is extremely important in the Gothic, and particularly dark, gloomy, sinister settings. If you want to be thinking about the setting of Victor's first appearance to Walton and the ice and the snow and the sort of blurring of what we're seeing when the creature emerges, these are all significant. And finally, the presence of contradictory forces. So these are just some of the things we're going to talk about in the novel. So this was the original title page for the first edition of Frankenstein. You'll notice that Mary Shelley's name is not on it. When readers began to speculate that her husband, Percy Shelley, may have written this novel, Mary Shelley was quick to claim that she indeed was the writer. This novel is steeped in mythology, so the creation of this novel dates back to a trip that Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley took with Lord Byron, another poet at the time in the Romantic period, and Polidori, who wrote a novel called The Vampire. And from this story, Mary Shelley's was clearly the winner and the only completed one. Some call this the first science fiction story because of the elements it shares with the Gothic as well as science fiction. And it raises questions about the role of the scientist as a divine creator and the presence of the supernatural connected to the scientist. This is how Shelley describes her inspiration for the novel. She said that she saw the pale student, Victor, of unhallowed arts, kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, show signs of life, and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion. So this is the moment in which the creature awakens and Victor flees because of the horror that he sees when the creature beholds him for the first time. This is a moment of birth in which the creature is beholding his father and his mother all in one, and all guidance, all support in his world flees moments after he is born. Frankenstein is often also described as an artist. Um, and so in the introduction to the third edition, Shelley wrote that his success would terrify the artist. He would rush away from his odious handiwork, horror-stricken. He would hope that the slight spark of life which he had communicated would fade. But he is awakened. He opens his eyes. Behold, the horror thing stands at his bedside, opening his curtains and looking at him with yellow, watery, but speculative eyes. This is a really important moment in Frankenstein, in which Victor is forced to make a decision about how he will proceed and treat his creation, in this case, not merely a piece of art. References to other texts in this novel are really important, and one of them that is going to come back repeatedly is a reference to Rime of the Ancient Mariner by another Romantic writer, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Victor is described as a divine wanderer that's similar to the wanderer of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, who is cursed to tell his story and becomes immortal to do so. And this reference is repeated in the novel, so that is where it comes from. We'll be talking about Walton's frame story. Walton is a failed poet who becomes a solitary wanderer and explorer, but he's also terribly lonely, and he finds something in Victor that consoles him. So it's important that he is the one who hears Victor's tale. The science of natural philosophy is something that interested Mary Shelley quite a bit, and so be paying attention to the language of light and electricity, because this is something that is important in the Romantic period, and that is interesting to Shelley on a number of levels. This is the moment when the creature opens his eyes, and the moment when shortly before Victor flees from his creator, from his creation. In our Norton, this is an article that talks about this language of electricity that is prominent in the Romantic period that Shelley is drawing upon. An important element of this novel is the ways in which creature and creator serve as doppelgangers. So on page 61, which is at the very beginning of volume 2, there's a passage in which it's difficult out of context to tell who is talking. However, this is Victor, who wanders like an evil spirit, for I had committed deeds of mischief, beyond description horrible, and much, much more. He is thinking about what he's done. He is thinking about what to do next. And he is also describing the experience of the creature that he has just left. This is what the creature will become. He is treated horribly because of his appearance. He is treated like a monster, despite the fact that he has begun benevolent and good. Here are examples of the Gothic and the sublime that appear throughout the novel. I ask you to read an essay by Peter Brooks in which he talks about the tale within a tale structure of this novel, the fragmented epistolary form. And he also argues that the central issue at the core of this text is the contrast between sight and speech, the fact that monstrosity is communicated in the form of a body. The creature is extremely eloquent and persuasive and speaks beautifully, which contrasts with a lot of the images of Frankenstein we see today, in which he is treated as monstrous. Brooks argues that Shelley offers a complex and troubled view of human psychology, in which the sturdy innovator is himself the one who falls into the trap of being unable to distinguish the possible from the monstrous, and this is something that Victor struggles to do. Pay attention to your own reactions to Victor throughout the novel. When do you sympathize with Victor? When do you sympathize with the creature? And here finally is an example of how the images of the Gothic are infiltrating the art at this time. That image could easily be taken out of a Frankenstein, and that could be Elizabeth.